Well, welcome to Poetry at the Dalí. It's a pleasure to have each of you here tonight. This is one of our proudest programs, and it's led each session by the former Poet Laureate of St. Petersburg, our dear Helen Pruitt Wallace. And I've asked her to read a poem of hers to begin our evening. My name's Hank Hine. I'm the museum director, and we're very grateful also to the city of St. Petersburg for giving us some sponsorship of this wonderful program, which has now gone a number of years. It ebbs and flows in terms of people's ability to visit on a given Thursday, but they are always aware of what's going on. So we really appreciate the poets being here tonight. And of course, there are people watching online as well. All of our readings can be found on our YouTube website. If you go to the Dalí and then look for its YouTube link. We look forward to you looking through some of the wonderful readings that we've had here in the past. And now, please welcome Helen Pruitt Wallace.
Thank you, Hank, and hello, everybody. So good to see you. Thank you for coming back. This is our last poetry for the season. We break for summer, and then we'll be back. It's possible we'll try to do an open mic in the summer, so stay tuned. That's maybe something that we'll try to do, but usually we run September through May, and we have a wonderful program for you tonight with Stacey Lynn Brown and Pedro El Poeta, who's been here before. So I'm delighted that you guys could be here too, and thank you, Hank, for so much. Also, Hank's son, Stuart, is here with us tonight. Thank you, Stuart, for coming also. And Stacey's fiance, Frank, is here too, and her family. So welcome to you all also. And any students or friends of Pedro's maybe in the audience, hello. Welcome. And thank you, yes, to the city of St. Pete and to all the museum staff that have helped us with this program for so many years. We really could not do it without all of you. So thank you, Kim, Dr. Kim McQuarrie, and also Sumaya Ayad, who's in the back. Thank you, Sumaya. And Thomas in the very back. Thank you, Thomas, for your help with our live stream. And I will read one poem. Now, this is a rough draft, I have to say, which I probably know better than to do, but it's not quite as new as the title's going to suggest. I did kind of retrofit the title just a little bit. But you'll hear the one thing I think you need to know. And many of you who are writers in the audience, and I know we usually do get several good writers here for our programs. Kevin Young is the editor of Poetry at the New Yorker, and he has a podcast. And one of the things I love to do, I walk a lot, and I often listen to his podcast as I'm walking. So you'll hear a reference to Kevin Young, and that's who that is, in case you're wondering. Okay, so this is an Ars Poetica, and I know you all know this. It's a poem basically about poetry. And this one, sort of. So, Ars Poetica, the day the Pope was chosen. They never tell you if you lean into weirdness, you become it. A mind at play is animal spirit, pure and simple. You select all images of buses, traffic lights, chimneys, but still you're a robot. Maybe the poem that enacts is in fact delusional. So many metaphorical leaps, you're stuck on a high wire, questioning even your questions. Should a poem be a call or response? And what about the slant rhyme in between with pushy insinuations? Whenever I say poem in dictation, my computer types it as porn. Maybe there's a lesson in that. Kevin Young suggests we turn to nature to probe the political. There's a skill particular to lichen inching up the trunks of dying trees, the way they make loss beautiful, weather it clean, while we still cling to our machinery, clicking on transcendence to come on command, as if we might know the unknowable. It's true. Say the words, there's no moon, and you evoke it. in a puff of smoke. So maybe you're just a believer who uses an M- to slide into home, then splits in a swig of daylight. Wherever you travel, someone else is the luggage you can't leave behind. So, thank you. Thank you. I am delighted now to introduce Stacey Lynn Brown. Stacey is a poet, playwright, and nonfiction writer, originally from Atlanta, Georgia. She's the author of the poetry collections Cradle Song, published in 2009, and The Shallows in 2018, and is the co-editor with Oliver de la Paz of A Face to Meet the Faces, an anthology of contemporary persona poems. Her poems, plays, essays, and interviews have been widely published and anthologized. A professor of literature and creative writing at the university level for the past 30 years. She's currently on permanent sabbatical, we hope not, working on her next act. So it is a pleasure to have Stacey Lynn Brown.
Thank you. Everyone here okay? Yep. Do not resuscitate. If you come upon him lying on the floor, unconscious, do not kneel down to feel for the wing beat of a pulse. Do not give your breath to him, your turned head eyeing the horizon of his chest. Do not call 911, not yet. Instead, palm smooth his hair, his brow. Hold his good hand so he can feel it. Whisper reassurances like, it's okay for you to let go. Like, we'll be all right. Like, you did well in this life. Like, we loved you. So, oh, thanks. Thank you. It's kind of hardcore subject matter, obviously, right? Writing about my father who suffered a massive stroke in 2008. And I found that it makes it a lot easier to give these readings with chocolate. So I'm gonna pass these around. These are regular, these are vegan. I'm gonna have my helpers. Yes. So chocolate makes everything better, right? So have a chocolate. So this, The Shallows is my second collection. My father had a massive stroke in 2008, and he was paralyzed on the right side of his body. He could walk using his left side, but he basically sort of dragged the right half of his body along. He was not able to speak, and when he could form the words, he had aphasia, so it was very frustrating. He couldn't get the right word at the right time. And it was really important to me to process. As a poet, I process everything through writing. And I processed this experience, these years, through poems. The first poem that I wrote in the collection, I wrote on the plane on the way home after I got the call. So it was 10 years in the making, 2008 to 2018. And it was really important to me to try to capture the space that he was in at the time, in between worlds. It was a very liminal space. He was in between his old life and whatever comes next. He was in a body that didn't work, sort of mutinied against him. He was completely there mentally, but couldn't articulate himself, and he was just sort of suspended in this moment in time for years. So that's what the collection is a sort of witnessing of that. I'm going to read the title poem, which is A Crown of Sonnets, The Shallows, and just to sort of break it down, sonnet is a Western literary poetic form, a 14-line poem. The end words of different lines rhyme. There are certain rhyme schemes. So like a Shakespearean sonnet would have A, B, A, B, so the A's rhyme and the B's rhyme. 14 lines. Crown of Sonnets is a collection of 7 sonnets. The last line of the first poem, the first sonnet, becomes the first line of the next, and so on, right? So its last line becomes the next poem's first line. And then the very last line of the 7th poem is the first line of the first sonnet, so it comes full circle. Yeah. I found it was interesting. I don't write in form, just as process. I chafe against it, against the restraints. I find it's already hard enough to try to articulate what I'm thinking and get it into words to begin with without the rules and the regulations. But there was something about this particular subject matter. I was thinking a lot about traveling down to Florida. My family came to the Gulf of Mexico every year. And in 2007, we took our last vacation before my father had his stroke. And he went for a swim in the ocean after playing golf and before we went out to dinner. And I remember sitting on the balcony and watching him walk into the water. And somehow I just knew it was the last time that was going to happen. And it was the last time he was going to go for a swim. And I was just sort of thinking about that and about my childhood and different experiences with the ocean. And for whatever reason, the form called out to me. The sonnet form called out to me, the crown did. And I think the more I think about it, the more I think is that there was something about the subject matter that was so unwieldy and so big that it helped to have a vessel to pour it into. So I'm going to read The Shallows now. And you'll notice I did a lot of different rhyme schemes because sort of chafing against the form. So you'll hear internal rhyme, but then the last one I wanted to note is called an unchained sonnet, where the last word of each line becomes the first word of the next, and that's the rhyme. So, all right, I guess you can take the teacher out of the classroom. All right, The Shallows. My father, wading out into the sea, his pale legs bowed parentheses, his hair a dusting of once black gray, above a body disappearing as he makes his way into the blue-green Gulf of Mexico. Watching him, somehow I know this is the last time. The ocean telegraphs its gathering storms, lets glean waters churning silt and sand as lightning fingers the surface past the blinking lights of buoy and barge, and planes fly overhead, trailing their bannered ads. Why these rough waves breaking him in half, not mild, like the waves he carried me through as a child? The waves he carried me through as a child lapped against my legs, broke on either side of us as he shielded me from their spray, wielded me shrieking with joy through the currented tide that push-pulled our bodies, that held us in sway. Safe in his arms, I rose above each swell, that moment aloft, descending gently, then lifted high again. Past the shelf of sand, the water calmed, warming. Below us, the silvery glint of fish nibbling at his toes, darting unalarmed. The glow of phosphorescent jellyfish gliding past, their tendrilled arms no threat to me, our bodies bobbing in the buoyancy. Our bodies bobbing in the buoyancy, my father taught me the physics of the sea, that waves are disturbances caused by distant winds, how they shoal higher and higher in the shallows until they break or don't, while below the ocean floor erodes. Always the question as we waited, poised to catch the biggest wave back to the beach, rise above the cresting swell, or dive headlong, let the magnitude pass through. Windmilling our arms, we ascended like a prayer, beseeched, carried forward with a grace that could never be repaid, while my mother watched the sky, called us back to shore, afraid. My mother watched the sky, called us back to shore, afraid of the swell, the unpredictable tide, but we balked, swam strong, never worried about what we could not see, only the flutter kick of our legs, our biceps hammering through the foam, until the day my father, just beyond my reach, got caught in a riptide no signs warned us of, and panicked, thrashing to stay afloat, while I recalled that lifeguard rhyme, if caught in a tide that pulls you to sea, swim parallel to shore until you are free. But he could not hear my shouts above the sonics of the surf, so I swam out to him, surrendering myself to the same deepening pull, cooed calming words, approached cautiously, talking him through. Just relax, Dad, I've got you. And I felt him let go then, felt him frail and thin in a way he'd never been before. His concave chest so easy to wrap my arm around, his bony body so light above my hip as I scissored us both through the unyielding waves, our chests heaving ragged with the knowledge of what was to come. The fragility of the future as certain to me as the grainy sandbar our grateful knees dragged against, in the respite, in the transitory safety of right now. Safety right now means triple checking the dump valve and tank pressure, duck walking in fins down the pebbled path to the water's edge, wading ankle, chest, then body deep inside the darkening sea, through brown-hued blues and my own breath gurgling dissonant in the cathedral silence. Anemones waving like truffula trees in this pocket of Puget Sound. Eyeing me, a giant octopus lifts his skirt and jettisons, inking dark the space where this predator spies. Halibut hoverfly along the ridged and sandy bottom as I skim the length of the continental shelf, just shy of the drop-off. All darkness. A dividing line I now know separates the salvaged past from future sorrow. What lies ahead, unfathomable as the unplumbed depths below. What lies ahead, unfathomable as the unplumbed depths below, he falls, leaping from the drop-off into whatever comes next, astronaut. He falls through nothingness into the murkiness below, tumbling end over end over. He falls in the study, falls out of the only life he knew. He falls ceaselessly, falls carelessly, falls unconsciously, falls unwittingly, falls desperately, falls finally. He free falls through the darkness like I once plummeted through borrowed sky. He falls. He falls ceaselessly, carelessly, unconsciously, unwittingly, desperate, and final. Finally, we come to understand that we cannot catch him, can only sit watching, waiting, awaiting, hoping he will return to us, but knowing he will not. Fashion whatever is left over back into a man. The aftermath, stutter step, steps listing, caned lurch, left brain, right side, braced foot, dangling arms and hands, hand stiffened mid-salute, loosening his grip on this world, one fingertip at a time. Timeless specimen trapped in amber, magnolia blossom floating in a glass-cut bowl. Bold, we take him back to the ocean, wheel him to the berm where the sand begins, begin his recovery yet again, but his chair gets stuck in the sand and he is agitated, wants to go back inside, watch golf in the condo while his children, grandchildren, play on the bone-white beach. And even though I know it isn't possible, impossible, I still catch sight of him then, in the young man carefully making his way away from us, disappearing gradually, that diminishing figure that can only ever never again be my father wading out into the sea. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to read one more because I'm excited to hear Pedro. This is a newer poem, similar subject matter. This is the first reading that I've done since my father passed. The book was published in 2018. He died in December of 2020, and my mother died 10 months later in October of 2021. So obviously a lot to process there, a lot to write my way through. Just hoping, to glean from that something, something useful, maybe. And then in November of 2023, in October, November, there was a moment in time where 3 people very dear to me were losing parents all at the same time. And I wrote a poem to give whatever I could, something small. So I want to read that as my final poem, and I want to dedicate it to my friends Brian Turner, Rich VR, and my own Frank Houston. Advice for my friends whose parents are dying. Say everything but that which cannot be unsaid. You do not need their forgiveness, and they do not expect yours. If you are there with them, memorize their breathing, ragged with the effort of straddling 2 worlds. Give them permission to go and mean it, as they themselves once sorrowed to set you free. If they die without you, do not despair. The dead are never really gone. They just will never again be exactly as they were. Perhaps this is a good thing. And just as they still see in you the boy you once were, pity the child they have become again, terrified of what comes for them. This is the worst club ever. Welcome. Thank you.
Stacey, what a beautiful, beautiful, poignant reading. And, what a perfect form for that material. Yeah, we've talked about this, I think, many times in our poetry programs here. Whenever you have, something that you're wrestling with or causing a lot of grief, to put it into some kind of vessel, whether it's a form like the sonnet crown or a villanelle or something to compress. Yeah, it was perfect. It was beautiful. Thank you for that good reading. And now we have the pleasure of having back to Poetry at the Dalí, Pedro El Poeta. I'm so glad to have Pedro here with us. Pedro is an award-winning hip-hop spoken word artist, an activist, a proud father of 2, an Eckerd College graduate with a BA in creative writing. He's performed at the Tampa Bay Performing Arts Center, the Poynter Institute, the Studio at 620, the Nelson Poynter Memorial Library at USF, the Safety Harbor Art and Music Center, and a soundtrack that Pedro performed for the internationally acclaimed short film Torn Asunder won awards at film festivals around the country, including the Tampa Bay Creative Catalyst. So, an honorary speaker at TEDx Tampa Bay, Pedro was also named Artist of the Year at the Tampa Bay Regional Talkie Awards. Please join me in welcoming Pedro. Glad to have you.
Appreciate everybody that's here in attendance today. I'm about to take you on a little roller coaster ride, if that's cool with everybody here. Now, the last time I performed at one of the Poetry at the Dalís, I told everybody that I was finally at the point in my life where I would dig out all the trash bags full of poetry I had under my bed and work towards writing a book. I slacked on it for a while, but just to let y'all know, if y'all were here before, the book is underway. It's coming soon. I will. It's coming soon. It's coming soon. So tonight I'm going to do a variety of things. I'm going to read a little bit from that upcoming book, and then which is basically, that book is like it's a trip down memory lane for me. I think the poetry from there starts about as early as 19, 20, 21 years old, up to where I am today. And I'll let y'all take your guess on that. I'm gonna try not to date me. So it's gonna be a wide scope of poetry from throughout my life that's gotten through me. The name of the upcoming book is called Waning Memories, so keep your eyes out for it. And I'm gonna start off with the poem that opens up the book. It's called Before My Memory Fades. The last poem of the book is also going to be called Before My Memory Fades, but it's gonna have different meanings to it. So here's the opening poem to my upcoming book. All right. I'm a creature of bad habits, like I've hoarded them for years. I've got bottles full of empty nights where memories disappear. I got pockets full of broken dreams, a pen full of ideas, a pulse like a polluted stream, a pillow full of tears. I treat pain like a prescription pill. That pill's what makes it real. I got panoramic vision, but I'm blind to how to heal. My past is like a haunted hall, a poltergeist you feel. My mind, a memory's mausoleum, a damaged movie reel. I got a passion for the path I'm on that clashes with my fears, and a need to reach your pantheon and smash through all these tears. See, despite all of the turbulence, my purpose remains clear. So before my memory fades me, I just need to know I'm here. Thank you. Question for whoever's live streaming. If I leave the podium, do I get out of your live stream? Or will it follow me around? All right. So here's what we're going to do right now. I'm loud. I got a loud mouth. I know. I've been told I'm not welcome at libraries. Hopefully my book is one day, but it's just not me. So I'm not going to use the microphone for this next one. And I'm not going to introduce this poem, but I do have an anecdote to tell you about it that relates to the Dalí Museum. At the tender age of 15. At the tender age of 15, I killed for the first time. I killed for the last time. I killed 5 years of my time. Time I took for granted. Time at the park. Time spent outside. Breathing the warm air of freedom. Time loving. Time caring. Time with my friends, with my siblings, with myself, drinking icy cold cherry popsicles, but without the notion of time and its irreversibility. And at the tender age of 15, I killed for the first time. But don't get me wrong, I ain't never murdered nobody, but I did kill him. I killed that ruthless, borracho, dirty scum, poor excuse for a padrastro piece of shit. Ese machista desgraciado who thought beating a woman made him a man, and I, at the tender age of 15, knew better than him. I saw him grab mama. I saw him push mama. I saw him throw mama, slap mama, hit my mama. I saw mama get knocked out. Then I saw a gun in my mama's mouth, and I, at the tender age of 15, tried to defend her. He cursed at me, pointed the gun at me, and shot at me. At the tender age of 15, I almost died, but that barrel was missing una maldita bala, and I didn't die. I didn't die because Diosito did not want me to die. Diosito did not want my mama to die, so at the tender age of 15, try to defend her. I spit through the neck, revenge-stained red face, burst volcanoes, hot lava, and a cherry-colored ice pick in my head. As I looked down at Mama, she didn't even know what I had done, but she loved me for it. No, she did. At the tender age of 15, I knew she loved me. But at the tender age of 15, I was a killer. So I ain't never murdered nobody. At the tender age of 15, I had a good time. Baluarte. That's what they call it here because of the tall watchtowers the Sandinistas left behind. It's cold in here in this third world jail. It's cold, I'm hungry, and the mosquitoes feel like ice picks in this third world jail. 2 cement beds, 1 sheet, 1 pillow, 1 barred window of pie, the closest I get to freedom. I'm respected here. And mama lives. And I'm alive. And I just turned the jaded age of 18. And by the way, thank you. What you just heard is a true story. It's not about me, but it's mine because I own it. I am a poet. I'm one of the cogs that keeps this community going, and you don't show it. Now, I remember a time when poets used to serve as ambassadors to their nations and mobilize and globalize ideas. And now you see us and look at us like we're martyrs. Like I chose to be a poet just to be a starving artist. Like I call myself a rapper just to see who laughs the hardest. Like I had a choice in regards to where my heart is. You see, I am because my art is. I'm that street reporter knocking on your door screaming, humanize hip hop, humanize rap. It's our kids that's affected by music. Utilize that. So next time your kids put on TikTok or YouTube TV, remember you can help decide who their next role models can be. So like you're doing today, keep supporting your local artists, please. Thank you. Funny anecdote about that poem. I was asked to do a TED Talk here, right? And this was before this building opened up as the new Dalí Museum. They did the TED Talk here. So I come, and I'm in just suits everywhere, right? Suits everywhere. Now, Peter Kageyama, very well-respected writer from the city. He had just published a book. He gets me on board, and he's sitting front row, and he's proud of the fact that he got me over here to speak. And I started at the tender age of 15. I killed for the first time, and everybody in the room is like, "What? You brought a who? Why is he here?" So I say that whole poem, and I finished my poem, and that's what I heard. Until Peter Kageyama, the front seat over there, he's like, and then everybody starts clapping. So it's kind of cool, because one, it was like, it had an impact, the impact I wanted, but two, it was just, they weren't expecting someone to come up there and do a poem about killing someone. I ain't never murdered nobody. Anyways, that was a true story about my brother. He actually went through that. And I wrote it for him for his 18th birthday. And when I called the prison to read the poem to him, he had gotten released that day for good behavior. So I think that something powerful came in me putting this down. So I wanted to share that with you. Another thing about me, I am a high school teacher. I have been teaching dropout prevention in the area since 2007. Now I just dated myself. Ooh-wee, I'm old. Good genes, I guess, I'm going to read to you guys a conversation that I had with one of my students that changed this person for the rest of their lives. Became literally an exemplary student after this. Graduated. We didn't think he could make it. He made it. This is called In What Way? One day a student told me there was no way I could feel them. There was no way I'd relate. I took this as some thinking there was no way I could heal them. There was no way we'd equate. So I asked them, in what way? They told me I had no idea what it's like to be poor. They told me I would never know what's hood. They told me I would never know what's hardcore. They told me no one ever understood. So I asked them, in what way? They told me no one understood the struggle. They told me no one understood the pain. They told me in a way that wasn't subtle that all us teacher people were the same. So I asked them, in what way? Now, the students soon grew wary of my questioning. They started asking questions of their own. They even asked me if I was arresting them. I said, My classroom's not a jail. It is a home. And I explain. I grew up with the poorest of the poor, where you don't expect to see another day, because I was born into an ugly civil war in a third world country far away, where eating beans and rice was a commodity, only if you had the means to get paid. See, getting where I got makes me an oddity. I, too, have faced some of these hardcore stakes. My parents left me when I was a baby. I had to flee my home when I was 6. There are those who've lived the struggle daily, who have broken and are now ready to fix. I'm not your king. I don't expect you to follow me. You just don't need to question how far I've delved. Because when I come into this classroom, I bring all of me, the one who feels you and the one who wants to help. And then my student asked me, in what way? Thank you. So I gave you a little bit of background there. I did a performance for USF a couple weeks ago, and I got to sit at a table with professors and historians and really cool people after the show. And one of them was a former professor of mine from Eckerd College who asked me the question, I guess, when is your memoir coming out? So when I get done with this book of poetry, once I'm got something published, I'm gonna be like, all right, I guess I can sit down and write it. But I like to give it to y'all in little glimpses, all right? So this next poem's it's a little glimpse to my backstory. It's called Castaway Crop. Alone and feeling weak, grown but never peaked. What happens to a crop that's sown but never reaped? Roots weak in rocky soil, left behind a spoil against the odds, but made it still, a product of its toil. No thanks to you, though. No thanks to you. Let's look at how you treated it. Never watered or weeded it. No warmth there when it needed it. The cold nearly defeated it. Crass indeed, a classless deed from an absentee farmer. Who plants a seed they never planned to feed? A real charmer, aren't you? You know what's real? Karma. And the fact that this seed somehow developed a steel armor. No thanks to you, though. No thanks to you. Your words, fickle and weak. Your eyes, icicles deep, but they're cold because they resemble a sickle that never reaped. Maybe that crop was just a mistake. The seed that dropped from a plate that was too full, or maybe that's not the case. It's just an intoxicating thought that jogs in place like a true fool, but what are my options, eh? You either plan to plant that plant there, then abandon it with conscious hate, or that seed wasn't what you deemed it would be, so you deemed it an obnoxious waste. Either way, those options are too noxious to contemplate. Just another life cast aside like a castaway. But don't fly those flags at half-staff, because his ass ain't passed away. He's amassed his blessings and is past his past today. No thanks to you, though. No thanks to you. Because while you disregarded and unguarded it, parted ways and tended to other gardens, it's shell hardened. It kept itself ardent, fenced its own yardin. Now you change jargons, wanting a damn part and driving a hard bargain. The cycle is not starting all over again. Sorry, I'm not sorry. It's too late for words uttered. So don't let your breath hover above me, for all my love is reserved for my real mother. And that will never be you. All thanks to you, though. All thanks to you. Thank you. I'm doing on time. 2 more. All right. I'm going to share a poem with y'all that has a crazy kind of background to it. A few years back, I was asked to do a poetry show over at the Arts District over here for an organization called You Good, Mental Health Awareness. And what they did was pretty cool. They teamed up all these writers with these painters, amazing artists. And we had to pick one that spoke to us, and then we were going to write something like an ekphrastic almost piece. I saw this sketch out of the different things, just this strong-looking person, and I was like, that speaks to me. Then I found out it was about suicide. This person had committed suicide, this artist's best friend. And I'm like, now it really speaks to me. When I was 4 years old, my grandmother committed suicide. When I was 9 years old, my father committed suicide. When I was 21 years old, love of my life from college committed suicide. So I'm familiar with the topic, so I said, all right, I picked the image. It spoke to me for a reason. So I talked to the artist, and he told me a little bit about his friend Mike, and I went from that point on, and I wrote this poem about his friend and his situation. A year later, I go to play a trivia one night, and I'm with my friend Mike. Mikey, we called him. I left early that night for whatever unforeseen reason. The next day, I get a call from his girlfriend. I just found Mikey hanging in his apartment. I need you here right now. So I left what I was doing. I went to see her. Later on that day, I get a Facebook memory, and it was this poem that I wrote. And I read it, and I cried my heart out. I realized that exactly a year before, I didn't write that poem about that guy I'd never met. I wrote that poem about my best friend, Mikey, who had just committed suicide. So here's that poem. Meet Mike. I know he was a pillar here, no doubt. I bet you felt the strength that he put out. I bet you felt the passion in his actions and his words when he was loud, but did you notice all his silent routes? It's in the darkness that you'll find men fight their hardest bouts. Meet Mike. I bet you felt the warmth was in his eyes, right? I bet you it was welcoming and nice and full of life so much that it would make you all just feel alive, right? But what if all that warmth was just to hide the ardent cries that you never stuck around to hear him cry at night? Maybe you were there until you weren't. But before you left, I bet you felt his courage. I bet you when he smiled, you felt the full force of his current, like his smile could only be defined as fervent. Maybe there were signs that he was hurting, but you couldn't know for certain because his smile was his most powerful deterrent. Meet Mike. And I repeat it because I want you all to hear his name. Because I wish that Mike was someone who was here today. But no one told him that not every day would be okay. Nobody told Mike it was okay not to be okay. Nobody told him it was okay to get help when he would delve into his hell and what he felt. It's not for me to say. Meet Mike. I'm going to do a short one to end it off. Just so you guys know, I write short ones too. Yeah, why not? This is one of the ones actually for my upcoming book. It's called Absence. As the ashtray transform into a sepulcher of forgotten memories, and the cans cascade out of a trash bin too small to house all of my bad decisions, I think of you. I cuddle up next to the thought of you and smile. It's a fleeting smile, but a smile nonetheless, as I fade alone into my absence. Thank you guys for having me. Now, because my first book is still unpublished, I don't have any books for sale. But if we have any hip-hop listeners out here, I do have some CDs for sale. It's Poetry to a Beat. Anyways, thank you guys for having me. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pedro. And yeah, here at the Dalí, we really believe in having a wide umbrella for poetry. And so I appreciate your being here. And absolutely, check out the CDs. And we are very glad to welcome spoken word poets as well into our, and both of you did such a great job today. Thank you again. Thank you all for being here. And we'll look forward to seeing you in September, but keep an ear out in case we end up doing an open mic at some point during the summer. So stay safe. Good night. Yes, I'm sorry. Let's do it here. around and if you have some questions. Yes, hey.
Thank you. Helen, thank you for putting together what would seem maybe like an unlikely pair, but are very likely. They're both wedded by this extreme emotion, and really appreciate hearing it in these different veins. They were talking about why form, and Pedro, you're the rhyme and the rhythms that you're using are extreme form, really locking things in so that we know what to hear, what to listen for, as well as Stacey's as well, and that wonderful series of sonnets. But you talked about how it helps you, but I think I just want to remark that it helps an audience as well. It helps the reader or the listener to know where the highs and lows are, and to be astonished by things that vary from that form. It's a really reciprocal thing. Form is like a gift that you use and then you give to us. It's really nice. So thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we need more questions here.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you so much for sharing. So my question is, you mentioned something about poetry in a bag somewhere. So what is your advice, or what has your journey been as far as reaching back for that poetry and maybe like the darkness of poetry? Like both of you shared content that was very emotional. And I'm one to just cry at poetry in general, but having lost my dad to about the same year, that was very touching. So I just, sometimes when I write, I get kind of stuck in that place. So I just wonder like what your path is, or like how you work through the emotion in order to be able to share it and put it in form.
I don't know if I need the microphone. For me, poetry's always been my therapy, kind of thing. I grew up in a culture where men don't really speak about their emotions. We don't go into a psychiatrist, psychologist, anything like that is kind of frowned upon in my culture. So I found my own therapist, and there's a lot of times when I have stuff to write out where I write it out, and maybe it never gets to the stage where I'm going to share it, and that's where a lot of the bags full of poetry under my bed are emotions that needed a place to go, and I gave them a place to go. And once I got it out, they're not gone, but it's a little bit of a less burden on my shoulders to have them out at least. And then I can always go back to them. Like now, it's been a journey in the past, year, going through all of that and picking things to put into this book that I want to the thread along and fit the theme. But it's also kind of cool that I have the entire spectrum of human emotion in trash bags under my bed. It's kind of cool to look back because it has my highs, it has my lows. Some of them I can't read the ink because I know there were tears that blotted them out, and that's also part of the journey. So I think just finding them a home first, and then when you revisit them, then you could touch them up without the burden of that weight on you at that moment. You can come back and revisit them and turn them into something later on. So that's been my journey.
That's nice. Yeah, I think I wrote my first poem when I was 5. It was at the beach, and I remember it. I'm going to bust it out because I have to. It's, the ocean is a lovely treat with birds and sand and crabs that pinch your feet, right? But I remember my mom and dad were like, oh, bravo, bravo. And I was like, ooh, I want to do this, right? Like I want to take language and make people react, So it was always a way of processing things. And I think that the older that I get, the more I realize that there are poems that you write for yourself, and then there are poems that you write to share with others. I have probably 2.5, almost 3 books that will never see the light of day. They're like they're in form, they are paginated, they are titled and everything, but they were process, not product. right? So I feel like it's a language like any other, you know, and I think in it sometimes, I hear it, I process using it, and again, that sort of conversation about form and the strictures and how that helps, you know, it's interesting because once I realized, you know, that the crown, the sonnets were helpful to me, I ran into a couple of other poets who also wrote crowns of sonnets about their fathers, which is really interesting to me. Something about that specific subject matter, those specific vessels. So I mean, it's something that I sort of think about a lot, you know. I don't generally write in form, but I feel like if you're just, you said you're just starting out on your journey, just write. You know, don't be an editor, don't be mean to yourself. Give yourself the freedom to do what Annie Lamott called write a shitty first draft, right? Like, you know, just write, just get it out there and then figure out what you're gonna do with it. Sometimes it needs to stay in the trash bag under the bed, and sometimes it needs to be like picked up and dusted off and worked with, you know, but you're doing the important work, which is getting to the page to begin with, you know. So you just keep doing it, and then share it, yeah, and then share it, yeah.
I just wanted to add to that you know, trust your instincts too, and when you're doing that first work of just getting ideas down, when images surface and you're not even sure where they're coming from, trust them. You know, they're probably surfacing for a reason. So don't be too quick to just scratch off images, even if you don't quite understand them at first. Keep them and see where they take you. If not in that poem, they may be useful in something else. But I find sometimes when we're doing that invention work, the clustering, the brainstorming, all those things to kind of get our ideas going, it's good to keep your work on a pretty long leash, you know, if you will. And I totally agree with the idea of using form later as you're shaping some of those feelings, to use form as just that compression of emotion can be so powerful. So, but that kind of comes at a later time after you've gotten some of that feeling and some of that emotion down. It's funny because I wrote a sonnet crown actually about my about where I grew up and a lot about my mother, who died of dementia, and it was the same sort of thing. It was in part to try to kind of lasso some of that emotion, but then later I went in and kind of busted it all up and destructed it in some ways. So, but yeah, I would encourage all of you guys, if you haven't played with form, it's a great thing to do. It really can take you in surprising ways, and so. More questions?
Okay. Can I ask a question to both of you? It's a simple question. I just was wondering how you cope with if you get uninspired, how you cope with that, or how you cope with writer's block or procrastination. Thank you.
Writer's block and procrastination. Yeah. So I am a do as I say, not as I do kind of poet. People will talk about the discipline of writing. It's a muscle, and like anything else, you have to keep doing it. And you know, inspiration meets you at the desk, and all of these things. I'm not that kind of writer. I am constantly working on stuff, but it's in my head. So by the time I actually get to the page, a lot of it is pretty much there. Like it's kind of what it's going to become, because it's always kind of percolating, you know, like it's simmering in the back of my mind. So I can go for months without hitting the page, which is unnerving, you know, is scary, because sometimes I'm like, well, what if it doesn't come back, or what if I don't go back to the page, you know? But if you're an artist, if you're a writer, you're an artist. It's not about what you do. It's about how you move through this world. It's about how you see this world. It's about how you process everything that's happening to you. And whether or not you paint a picture for a year or not, you're still an artist, right? And I think it's just trusting yourself and trusting your identity and trusting that whenever it is that you get back, your art will meet you. It will be there waiting for you, you know? Writer's block, if you've got something due, just write. Just, you know, one thing that I tell my students to do is to dial down the monitor so you can't see what you're typing and just type. Don't edit, just type, just this free flow of emotion and language, and then go back and try to cull it and shape it or whatever. But I think the worst prisons are the ones that are inside of our own minds, right? So if you say it's not writer's block, it's not yet, or it's an opportunity to try something new or whatever, you know, if you can reshape it in your own mind and just trust yourself, trust that your art will be there, you know, when you get back to the page.
Very well spoken. I welcome it. I welcome writer's block. I welcome procrastination. I love procrastinating. To me, it's like can't force art. On the other end of that fence, I love a challenge. So I feel like when I get given a project, get given something to aim for that inspires me, and I do some of my best work when someone asks me to feature on their song and they already picked the theme. I love features when it comes to like doing music stuff. This project I just did for USF Library, which involved a whole research component of it, and to write an ekphrastic poem based on it. I loved the challenge, and I, you know, it just got published literally on the last Creative Loafing. It was the first time getting my poetry published in a newspaper, and I hadn't written in months. But I got given a good challenge. That inspires me. So if you ever get an opportunity to challenge yourself, that might be a way to break through the wall. But if you're just like me, welcome the wall. Get Trump to build it. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, get that wall built up, because it's nothing more, you know, inspiring than when you shatter through that first brick of that wall, you know, like Pink Floyd would have said. Break through it, and then it's freeing. It's a liberating moment. But you use that time when you're in that moment of there's nothing's coming out. Use it. Build it up, bottle it up, let it explode one day. Everything people tell you not to do with your emotions, freaking do it, but do it healthily. Do it on a page or do it on a stage. If you have a way to let it out eventually, let it build up. Let it burst through that wall. It's even better than just graffitiing the wall, and they could just paint over it. Break that shit, man. You know, so yeah, I welcome it 100%. I welcome writer's block. I welcome procrastination, because when the time's right, it's gonna come out full force. I want that dam to burst.
I just want to add one thing to that. Lots of times, if I'm kind of feeling a little bit of that block, I start with reading. So I do recommend that. Find some poets you like. It doesn't even have to be poetry, but spend some time reading first. I often will start my writing time with reading, and I like to read people who write very, very differently than I do. That's kind of I don't know, that helps me break that wall a little bit. So I would encourage to read widely and read often. Read stuff that you don't, not even sure why you're attracted to. You don't even have to completely understand it. But even just to hear the sounds and read them out loud. I'm a big believer in working on your own poems out loud. Not just when you're revising in the later stages, but even in the early stages. I think you need to hear the sounds of what you're putting on the page. So yeah, just read, but don't give up. Keep at it. Absolutely. Other questions? Oh yeah, sorry.
I love the idea of the challenge, right? It's interesting when I would give my students prompts, they ended up writing poems that never would have existed otherwise, right? So whatever the equivalent of that is in like visual art or whatever, maybe you find a painting and you say, okay, I'm going to try to like render a version of this that's mine or whatever, right? I think it's a great idea to give yourself a challenge, because you'll just branch out into spaces you wouldn't have normally gone.
I did not know this about Dalí when I started doing it with poetry, but Salvador Dalí set out to say, I'm going to master as many art forms as possible before I create my own style. And he did. He did expressionism, he did realism, he did literally everything. He did the Picasso's Blue Period. He did everything before he joined the Surrealist movement, or helped innovate, create the Surrealist movement. I was doing that starting in high school, speaking about form, where I was just like, oh, cool, sextet, quartet, couplets, cool, sonnets, let's try that, Italian sonnets, let's try that. And I wanted to do that, and that's what kept me writing when I first started going through my journey, because it was so invigorating to see these new styles. Like, how can I say exactly what I want to say, but make it a slave to this form at the same time? And I was like, well, how many slaves made it through history going through what they went through? They're going to make it through, so I wanted to do that. So I started doing that. Every form I could find, I wanted to write poetry to that until it sounded good. And then I kind of found my voice through that. But those were those challenges. You know, you challenge yourself, you're only going to grow from that challenge. So if you're ever feeling like you're stumped, let me find a challenge. What haven't I done? What haven't I mastered? I'm not going to say perfected, but what haven't I mastered? Those challenges keep you growing. So.
Other questions from you all? In the back here?
I wanted to ask Stacey, the poems that you read, I'm sure you have many others, and I just wondered if there were certain considerations you made tonight in choosing the poems that you read. And for Pedro, I wanted to ask about Meet Mike. Was that written to other people or to yourself? Were you speaking to your, were you? Yeah.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so Meet Mike, I wrote for an audience. What I wanted to do was capture the essence of a person I'd never met and would never get the pleasure to because they were gone. It wasn't written about anything that came from, it came from my personal experience because of my experience with suicide, but I did not write that as a personal poem. It was meant to be shared for a particular show. It just so happened that exactly a year later, it became a personal poem because I lost my best friend, Mike, to the exact same thing. And when I read over that poem was 100% about Mike. So it was a poem I wrote to be shared with an audience and became one of the most intimate poems I've ever written in the process. So it was kind of a dual thing. So.
Yeah, so how I chose what I was going to read, I'll be honest. I've been writing a lot of nonfiction recently and also working on a musical. I don't know. Thinking about forms and you were talking about like sort of different types of writing. I write poetry, I've written plays, essays, that kind of thing. And it's really interesting to me to sort of have familiarity with different genres and then figure out where the subject matter belongs, like what it sort of asks for. Like, is this thing that I want to write about, is it a poem? Is it a short story? Is it an essay? Is it a play? And I find that the subject matter will sort of speak to me in those ways. So recently I've been working, when I get to the page, it's been nonfiction. I'm working on like a memoir, basically, and essays, and then I'm also working on other projects. So when the invitation came to read poetry, I was like, I'm gonna read from this. And then also the advice poem was the most recent poem that I've written. But thinking about sort of poems over time, my first collection, Cradle Song, came out in 2009. And I have a very complicated relationship with that book. I'm happy, of course, that it's in this world and it pleases me in that way. But it's also kind of like looking at pictures of yourself with braces and like a bad haircut, because I'm not entirely like, oh wow, I was young when I wrote that, or I would have done that poem differently or whatever. But you have to sort of be, I think, gentle with the versions of yourself that are on the page. So yeah, I think I have another manuscript that's sort of in the chute. I have to go back to it. It's all persona, which I don't write. I'm a very autobiographical writer, clearly. And this was a totally different project. It was kind of a challenge in that way. It's about Tiny Broadwick, who was she was a young girl who ran away and joined the circus, basically, when she was about 12 or 13. and she was the first person to jump from an airplane using a parachute. And she was like, she would jump off the side of a biplane with this like silk parachute, and it's fascinating to me, you know. Anyway, I have this whole other manuscript that when I come back to poetry, I need to look at these poems and figure out what's going to happen with this book. But yeah, and I thought about, I actually was considering maybe bringing in some prose to read tonight, but I just, for the sake of cohesion and for the fact that this is, you know, the most recent, and this is, like I said, this is the first reading that I've done since my parents died, and so it's a strange space to occupy, you know. The book itself was so much about capturing that moment when he was still alive, those years, that 12-year period that he was still alive, and it's a strange thing, like it extends beyond past tense, you know. It's just a very strange new relationship I have with the book now, so I'll probably be processing that for a while, probably writing about it.
Any other questions? Anybody up there? No. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here, and again, a big round of applause for our. Please go out and check out the CDs and buy some books. Okay.
CDs I have on my person.